boy was crying, not with loud wails, not pleading for help, just sitting there, trembling, clutching something tightly against his chest. People hurried past him, in a rush, preoccupied, indifferent. Some stole a glance his way, then quickly looked away. Others didn't even bother to slow down. And that was the truly shocking part. Not a single person stopped, not even once. But hold on, this wasn't just any ordinary child, because what he was holding was a toy, was food, wasn't even money. It was something entirely different, something dangerous, something that had no place in the hands of a lost child, and he was fully aware of it. That's why he kept glancing over his shoulder, again and again, as if he was expecting someone, as if time was slipping away. But nobody noticed, nobody cared. To them, he was just another weeping child on the street, until a sleek black car suddenly pulled up right in front of him. Silence, the kind that makes people stop and stare. The door creaked open slowly, and a man emerged, calm, sharp, intimidating. Victor Romano. And what unfolded next, no one on that street would ever forget. Daniel Okoye had been sitting there for what felt like an eternity. Maybe it had been longer. Honestly, he had lost track of time. When you're alone, time has a way of feeling all twisted, especially when your stomach is in knots, your hands are freezing, and your eyes sting from crying too much. But he didn't cry out loud. No, Daniel had figured out something crucial. Crying out loud doesn't always bring help. Sometimes it just makes people hurry past you. So he stayed silent, trembling, clutching the small brown envelope pressed tightly against his chest. He wouldn't let it go, not even for a moment, because his mother had said something to him before she vanished, and those words kept echoing in his mind. Daniel, no matter what happens, don't lose this. He didn't understand why. He didn't ask questions. Her voice, it didn't sound right. It was filled with fear, and that fear seeped into him too. But that was hours ago, or maybe even longer. He couldn't tell anymore. All he knew was this: she never returned. And now he was all alone, in the midst of a bustling city that seemed indifferent. Cars zoomed by, people chatted, laughter rang out somewhere close. Life was bustling around him. But Daniel's world had come to a standstill, and still no one stopped for him. A woman in a red dress strolled past. She glanced down for just a heartbeat. Their eyes locked for a fleeting moment. Hope flickered across Daniel's face. But then she looked away and continued on her way. That was his mistake. Hoping. But she didn't know, he murmured softly to himself. Because deep down, something felt off. Something was very wrong. He tightened his grip on the envelope, his small fingers digging into it as if it were the only thing keeping him safe. Because maybe it was... A group of teenagers sauntered by, laughing. One of them pointed. Why is he just sitting there? Another shrugged, probably begging. And just like that, they moved on. No questions. No help. Nothing. Daniel lowered his head again, his breath shaky now. Slower. Weaker. And that's when it hit him. Pain. A sharp, piercing pain. Because he understood the weight of the moment. Time was slipping away. His mother felt it too. That's why she had been in such a hurry earlier. That's why her hands were shaking. That's why she kept glancing over her shoulder, as if someone was watching, as if someone was tailing them. But wait! Daniel's gaze shot up. He heard something. A sound. Not loud, but distinct. Not the usual street noise. This was smooth, controlled. A car. And not just any car. A sleek black one. Spotless, luxurious. It didn't fit in this neighborhood. It slowed down, then came to a halt right in front of him. Daniel went still. His heart raced, not from excitement this time, but from dread, because a voice inside him murmured, "This changes everything." The car door creaked open, slowly, and a man emerged, tall, composed, dressed in sharp, dark attire. His shoes barely whispered against the pavement. Yet somehow, the whole street felt quieter, as if everyone noticed, but didn't dare to stare too long, because they recognized him, even if Daniel didn't. Victor Romano, a man people avoided, a man people didn't question, a man people feared. But in that moment, he wasn't scanning the crowd. He wasn't eyeing the buildings. He wasn't even focused on the street. He was locked onto Daniel. Directly, no hesitation, no confusion, just focus. And that was odd, because Victor Romano wasn't the kind of man who stopped for anything, especially not for a crying child. But something had piqued his interest, something small, something most would overlook. Daniel's hands, the way he clutched that envelope, tightly, protectively, desperately. Victor's gaze sharpened slightly, not in anger, but in recognition, because he had seen that before, a long time ago, and it unearthed a memory he hadn't anticipated, a painful one. His body was caught in a tense mix of fear and exhaustion. Victor came to a halt right in front of him, looking down. For a fleeting moment, neither of them uttered a word. The silence hung heavy, speaking volumes without a single sound. Then, at last, Victor crouched down a bit, bringing himself to Daniel's eye level. In a calm, steady voice, he asked, "What are you holding?" Daniel didn't respond. He only tightened his grip. That was his mistake. Or perhaps it wasn't, because what unfolded next would alter the course of both their lives forever. Daniel didn't say a word. He just locked eyes with Victor, completely silent. His breathing was slow, as if each second was weighing heavily on him. Victor picked up on it right away. This wasn't just a case of a scared kid. No, this was something much more serious. Something lurking beneath the surface. Something that felt dangerous. But he didn't know, Victor thought, his gaze drifting back to the envelope Daniel was gripping tightly, too tightly, as if letting go would mean losing everything he had. Victor straightened up, aware of the world around them. But it felt distant now. People moved about, but they seemed to keep their distance, almost as if they recognized him. That recognition created a bubble of space around them, a kind of power in the silence. "Where is your mother?" Victor asked, keeping his tone calm and direct. Daniel swallowed hard, his lips quivering, but no words came out. That was the first red flag. Something was definitely off. Victor's jaw tightened just a bit, not out of anger, but concern. Yet he kept that concern hidden. Men like him didn't survive by showing their feelings. Still, something was breaking through, something old and buried, a memory he wished he could forget. But wait! Daniel suddenly turned his head, glancing behind him, quick and sharp, as if he had heard something. His eyes widened in genuine fear, and that shifted everything. Victor followed his gaze, but all he saw were people in cars, just the usual hustle and bustle. Yet he knew better. That kind of fear didn't just appear out of nowhere. That was the moment, he realized. This wasn't just a lost child. He was running from something or someone. Victor crouched down again, getting closer this time, his voice dropping to a controlled whisper. "Listen to me." He paused, and Daniel barely met his gaze again. "You're not safe here." Silence hung in the air, the wind lightly rustling through the street. Daniel's fingers tightened once more, and then finally he whispered, "They're coming." Victor's eyes sharpened, not surprised but confirmed. "Who?" he asked. Daniel shook his head, looking weak. "I don't know." That felt like a lie, or maybe he genuinely didn't know. But in the end, it didn't really matter. Daniel flinched again, this time with more intensity. His hand shifted just a bit away from the envelope, just enough for Victor to notice. Blood, a small, dark stain, was slowly spreading. Victor's expression shifted, just barely, but it was enough to signal a change. This was a mistake, he thought, not about the child, but about the whole situation. He reached out, moving slowly and carefully. "Let me see." Daniel instinctively pulled back, fear and pain evident in his eyes. "No." His voice trembled, weak. They said, "Don't trust anyone." Victor froze for a moment, those words hitting him hard. He recognized them all too well, too familiar, too real. Because once, a long time ago, another child had uttered the same phrase to him, and he had been too late to help. But she didn't know. Victor briefly closed his eyes, just for a heartbeat, then opened them again, feeling different, colder, more focused. A decision had been made. He stood up, turned slightly, and with a subtle gesture, his driver stepped out of the car, immediately alert. "What do you see?" Victor asked in a low voice. The driver scanned the street, sharp and professional. "Too many eyes," he replied, "and not the good kind." Victor nodded once. That was all the confirmation he needed. Then he noticed Daniel's body shift as he leaned forward, his breathing becoming uneven, faster, weaker. That's when Victor realized something crucial. The child wasn't just scared. He was running out of time. And that changed everything. Victor turned back, no longer hesitating. He stepped forward, reached down, and gently lifted Daniel into his arms. Daniel tried to resist, weakly. No! But it wasn't enough to stop Victor, who held him firmly secure, as if he wouldn't let go this time. "Relax," Victor murmured. "You're coming with me." Daniel's eyes fluttered, confusion and fear swirling within them. But something inside him shifted. He didn't fight anymore. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first time someone wouldn't walk away. The car door opened, and Victor stepped in with Daniel, the driver following closely behind. Just as the door was about to close, a man across the street caught their eye, and that was the moment everything started falling apart. The car was eerily quiet. Too quiet, really. It was a kind of silence that made every little sound feel amplified. Daniel's breathing was uneven, soft, fading in and out. Victor sat there, still as a statue. One arm was propped up to support the boy, while the other rested lightly near the envelope. He hadn't touched it yet, not at this moment. Something deep down told him that envelope was the key to everything. But he didn't know just how deep the situation ran. "Drive," Victor instructed. The car picked up speed, smooth and fast, yet controlled. No panic, no noise. That was Victor's way, always composed. But inside, something was stirring. Something he hadn't felt in years. Responsibility. And that was a dangerous feeling. "Sir," the driver's voice broke through, low and cautious. "We're being followed." Victor didn't respond right away. Just a brief pause. Then he asked, "Confirmed?" "Yes." A moment passed. 2 vehicles. Victor turned his gaze out the window, calm and calculating. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. That changed everything. He glanced down at Daniel, whose eyes were barely open now, fading. The boy's grip on the envelope was weakening, but he still held on, as if it mattered more than his own pain. "Daniel," Victor said, leaning in a bit closer. The boy blinked slowly. "How do you know my name?" he whispered. Victor hesitated, then realized he didn't know. At least, not until this moment. That was new information. Important. "Who told you that?" Victor asked. Daniel shook his head weakly. "My mom." "Where is she?" Silence hung in the air. Then he heard it. "I don't know." His voice cracked, and that was genuine. Victor could see it, feel it. This wasn't fake or hidden. It was real fear, real loss. Then Daniel's hand slipped a little, causing the envelope to tilt just enough for something inside to shift. A glimpse of a corner. Not paper, but something else. Something hard. Victor noticed immediately, his eyes narrowing. He had to be careful now. This was not normal. He reached out slowly, and this time, Daniel didn't stop him. He was too weak, too exhausted. With a blinking red light and a tiny drive attached, Victor's expression darkened. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. He knew exactly what that was. And that was a shocking truth. This child was carrying something that people would kill for, and maybe someone already had. Victor slowly closed the envelope and looked at Daniel again. He seemed different now, not just concerned, but understanding. "You don't know what this is, do you?" Daniel shook his head weakly. "No." "Good." That meant one thing. He wasn't involved. He was just caught in it, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe he was the only one left. But wait! The car suddenly turned sharply, tires gripping the road. The driver's voice sliced through the silence. "They're closing in." Victor glanced ahead, and then behind. 2 black vehicles were coming in fast, aggressive, and not hiding anymore. That told him everything. This wasn't just surveillance. This was retrieval, or worse, elimination. Victor leaned back slightly, feeling calm again, cold again. The man everyone feared was back. "Take the next exit," he instructed. "Yes, sir." Daniel shifted slightly, barely conscious now. "Am I going to die?" he whispered. Victor looked at him longer this time, and for a moment, something real showed, something human. No, it was simple, firm. But then there was a pause because deep down he wasn't sure. And then the car sped forward, the city lights blurring as the distance closed. Danger was no longer on the horizon. It was already here. Silence. But that wasn't even the worst part. The car swerved sharply. Left, then right. City lights blurred into streaks. Horns blared. People shouted. But inside the car, silence. Controlled. Focused. Victor Romano didn't panic. He never did. But his eyes, sharp now, tracking everything, calculating. "They're not backing off," the driver said. Victor glanced at the mirror. 2 black vehicles. Closer now. Faster. Aggressive. No hesitation. That meant one thing. They didn't care who saw. This was no longer quiet. This was war. But wait! Daniel shifted slightly. A weak sound escaped his lips. Pain. Real. His breathing was getting worse. Shorter. Faster. His hand dropped slightly from his side. And the blood. More now. Spreading. Victor noticed. Immediately. And that changed everything. Because now, this wasn't just about the envelope. This was about time. And they were losing it. Victor leaned forward, near a safe house. 7 minutes. The driver replied. Too far. Victor's jaw tightened. 7 minutes could mean death. For a child, it was everything. Faster. The car surged forward. Speed increasing. Danger rising. Behind them, the vehicles split. One stayed back. One accelerated. Closing distance. Smart. Tactical. Victor understood. They were trying to corner them. "Sir!" The driver reacted. Another sharp turn. The car barely missed a truck. Daniel flinched weakly. His eyes barely open now. "Stay with me," Victor said quietly. Not commanding. Not cold. Different. Daniel tried, but his vision was fading. But he didn't know if he could hold on. Victor looked down again, then back at the envelope. That small device, still blinking, still active, still dangerous. And then it clicked. Not just data, not just information. Tracking. They're not just following us. Victor said slowly, close enough to strike. And then it happened. A loud impact. Metal clashing against metal. The car lurched forward. Daniel's body shifted. Victor held him tighter. Firm. Protective. "Stay steady," the driver yelled. Another hit. Harder this time. They weren't just warning. They were trying to stop them. Or worse. But here's where everything changed. Victor's expression shifted. Completely. Cold. Decisive. Dangerous. The man they feared was fully awake now. "Open the compartment," he instructed. The driver reached down, pressed a hidden switch. A small section popped open. Weapons. Clean. Loaded. Ready. Victor didn't hesitate. He picked one. Calmly. Checked it. Then turned to the driver. "Hold the wheel." "What?" "I said hold it." The driver obeyed. Instantly, Victor shifted. Opened the window just a crack. The wind rushed in. Fast. Sharp. The car behind them closed in. Too close. And then Victor leaned out, one hand steady. Eyes locked. No fear. No hesitation. Just precision. Bang. One shot. The pursuing car swerved. Lost control for a moment, but didn't stop. These weren't amateurs. This was serious. Very serious. Victor pulled back in. Closed the window. Calm again. But now, there was no doubt they wouldn't stop. Not until they got that device. Or eliminated everyone holding it. And that was the truth. Daniel shifted again. Weaker now. Barely conscious. "Mom," he whispered. Victor froze. Just for a second. That word. Again. That memory. Again, his grip tightened slightly, not on the weapon, on the child, and something inside him snapped, not anger, not rage, something deeper, something personal. "You're not dying today," Victor said, quiet but absolute. The car sped forward. The car roared into the underground entrance. Darkness enveloped them. Concrete walls loomed. Echoes bounced around. The gate slammed shut behind them. For a heartbeat, silence. Heavy, controlled, safe, or so it felt. The engine quieted. Time seemed to stretch. But inside Victor, everything was a whirlwind. Fast. Too fast. Medical team. Now, he commanded. No time to waste. No second-guessing. Men rushed in. Professional. Ready for action. Daniel was lifted with care. Placed gently on a stretcher. But his hand, still clinging to Victor's sleeve. Weak. Fading. "Don't go," he murmured. Victor met his gaze. And for the first time, he didn't pull away. "I'm not going anywhere." Simple. Honest. They moved swiftly. Through the corridors. Into a secure room. Bright lights flooded in. A sharp, sterile smell. Urgency filled the air. Daniel's body felt fragile now. Barely hanging on. This was the moment. Everything teetered on a knife's edge. Life or death. Victor stood just outside. Watching. Waiting. But then, the envelope. Still in his grasp. Still blinking. Still alive. He glanced down at it. Slowly. Carefully. And opened it again. Fully this time. Inside, the device, the drive, and something more. A folded piece of paper. Victor hesitated, then unfolded it, and what he read changed everything. This was a shocking truth. The message was brief, messy, written in haste, but clear enough. "If anything happens to me, trust no one. They're inside. They will come for him. Victor Romano is the only one who can protect him." Victor froze. Completely, not from fear, but from recognition. Because the handwriting, he knew it. It was familiar. His breath slowed. His grip tightened. He didn't answer the phone. Too busy. Too cold. Too distant. That was the last time. And now this child, Daniel, Elena's son, his connection, his past, his failure, was her last chance. Victor shut his eyes for a moment. But this time, there was no control. Just regret. Real. Deep. And then, the door swung open. The doctor emerged. Serious. Cautious. "He's critical." Victor looked up. "Say it clearly." A pause hung in the air. "If we don't stabilize him soon, we'll lose him." Silence. And then, something shifted. Completely. Victor Romano, the man who built an empire on control, lost it. Not in chaos. Not in anger. But in a decision. Final. Absolute. No, just one word. But it held everything. He turned. Fast. Sharp. Locked down the entire building. His voice different now. Dangerous. Find out who's inside. Anyone involved. A pause. Cold. Doesn't leave alive. Because now, this wasn't about business. This wasn't about power. This was war. A personal war. For a child. For a past mistake. For something he couldn't afford to lose again. And in that moment, Victor gazed through the glass at Daniel, fighting, barely breathing, holding on. Everything changed forever. The building was eerily quiet. Not just any silence, but a controlled kind, like the stillness that follows a storm when everything has shifted. Victor Romano stood frozen just outside the medical room, his eyes glued to the scene inside. He was watching, waiting, for the first time in years. He found himself without control over what would happen next. And that was a feeling he wasn't accustomed to. But he didn't know, he thought, wondering if it was already too late. Inside the room, machines beeped softly, and doctors moved with careful precision, their focus unwavering. Daniel lay there, small and fragile, battling something his body couldn't quite withstand. Yet, against all odds, he was still holding on. That alone spoke volumes. Victor's gaze never wavered from him, not even for a moment. This wasn't just any child. This was a second chance, a chance he never thought he'd have. But wait! Footsteps echoed behind him, quick and urgent. Victor didn't turn. He already sensed what was coming. "Sir," one of his men said in a hushed tone, "we found them." There was a brief pause. 3 of them. Victor's face remained impassive. Inside, yes. That confirmed it. The note had been accurate. They're inside, not outside, not chasing, but already close, already watching, already waiting. This was the real threat. Victor realized they weren't just after the device. They were after the child, intent on erasing everything, removing the last piece. He turned slowly, his demeanor calm and cold, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside. "Where are they?" "Lower level." Victor nodded once and began to walk, not hurried, not loud, but each step carried a weight of finality. Behind him, 2 armed men followed, ready for anything. But they understood this wasn't just another job, it was personal. The hallway felt longer than usual, the air thick with tension. Finally, they reached the door, metal, closed, guarded. Victor paused, placing his hand on it for just a moment. In that instant, Daniel's voice echoed in his mind. "Don't go." Victor's jaw tightened slightly. "I won't," he whispered to himself. "I was wondering when you'd finally show up." Silence hung in the air, thick, dangerous. Then Victor stepped in. Calm, measured. "You picked the wrong place." The man chuckled lightly. "No." He shook his head. "We picked the right target." A pause lingered. "And you made it easier." Victor remained unflinching, but his eyes, locked, sharp, deadly. "What do you want?" Victor asked, his voice steady. The man grinned. "You already know." A quick glance. Hand over the device. "And the boy." Silence fell again. And then Victor took another step forward. Slow, controlled. No. Simple. Final. That was it. That was the moment. Everything shattered. Gunfire erupted. Fast, loud, violent, but controlled. Victor was the first to move. Precise. Every shot deliberate. Every movement calculated. This wasn't chaos. This was execution. One man dropped. Then another. The third tried to flee, but didn't get far. Silence returned. Heavy. Final. Victor stood there, still, breathing steady, unshaken. But inside, something had shifted, because this time, he wasn't doing it for power. He wasn't doing it for control. He did it to protect. And that was new, very new. Victor turned, walked back, faster now, not quite running, but close, because something mattered. Someone mattered. When he reached the medical room, he paused. The door was ajar. The doctor stood there, waiting. And for a moment, Victor didn't move, because this moment, this one, was the one that would decide everything. But he didn't know if he was about to lose again. "Say it," Victor urged. The doctor met his gaze. Then a small nod. "He's stable." Silence. Then relief washed over him. Carefully, firmly, and in that moment, something began to heal. Not entirely, not right away, but it was a start, because for the first time, Victor Romano didn't feel like a man who had lost everything. He felt like someone who still had a shot to do it right. Days later, the city looked just as it always did. Busy, cold, rushing by. But one thing had shifted. Victor Romano. He stood outside a quiet building. Not a safe house. Not an office. Something different. A home. Simple. Secure. Safe. Daniel stood next to him. Still on the mend, but stronger. Alive. Victor glanced down at him, then looked ahead. And for the first time in a long while, he made a different choice. Not about power. Not about control. But about responsibility. Because sometimes life doesn't hand you a second chance. But when it does, you don't turn your back on it. You don't walk away. You don't repeat the same mistake. Because one moment, one decision can change everything. And this time, he didn't let it slip away.